It was 1991, and I had been a believer for just a few short months at that point. I was 22 years old, and I was listening, I should say, to Moody Radio, and there was an interview going on with a gentleman who'd written a new book. It was called A Shattered Visage, The Real Face of Atheism. And one of the initial things that struck me as I was listening, and again, I'm a young believer, so I don't know a lot of things yet, but I heard this interview with this gentleman who had an Indian accent, which struck me, that he was defending the Christian faith and giving answers to the hard questions and talking about the various challenges to the Christian faith that so many atheists raise. And I would have assumed that an Indian was taking a more Eastern perspective on things. But here he was sharing these beautiful truths of Scripture and sharing about how he himself had come to know Christ after attempting to commit suicide himself. And I was just so deeply just captivated by what he was talking about that when the time came at the end of the interview to order the book, I called the number, I ordered the book. There were no websites at the time. You couldn't just get online and get on Amazon or something. And so I ordered the book, and it came, and I just absolutely just dove into it and devoured it. I just loved it. And I in retrospect, thinking about those times, those earliest times of my Christian life, and I was very fortunate. I had great friends who were strong believers who discipled me. I was in a good, solid Bible teaching church. And at a very, very early stage, I was introduced to this whole idea now through Ravi's ministry of apologetics. Ravi Zacharias and his international ministry that grew out of his desire to share that which he had come to embrace and to speak to the mind as well as the heart was something that just absolutely resonated with me. It was something that just, again, captivated me, and it's never stopped. And I owe a great deal of my own particular way of viewing Scripture and even sharing my faith in that to what I kind of grew to understand through that ministry in my own early years. He just had this wonderful capacity to take deeply philosophical, richly intellectual ideas and to share them with a Christ-like love, weaving them with stories and helping just people to get these big concepts and to understand that there are answers to the hard questions. Just that ability to weave these things together was something that to me just absolutely just influenced me deeply. And I'm forever grateful for that. I'm thankful as somebody who has embraced apologetics, again, since my earliest part of my Christian life, in large part due to Ravi. I'm thankful for so many great apologists that have come through history, really, since great defenders of the faith from the earliest time of the church. But in our day, I'm thankful that we had Ravi among the many great voices that exist out there in that arena. And I think he helps us to understand not only that there's an importance to sharing our faith and answer the hard questions, but it is also a very meaningful exercise for us personally, as well as those who we share with and speak to. His ability to do this in a way that created bridges and open doors and helped people to leave considering these things more than battling against them was something that I took from that as well. He would talk about how he would quote the Indian expression that if you cut off a man's nose, don't give him a rose to smell. Don't expect him to be able to smell a rose. And the idea of sharing your faith in such a way where you don't cut off their nose and then try to get them, as it were, to smell the rose of the gospel. It changed my own sensibilities of the relational aspect of evangelism and of the gospel itself, which is so much more than just facts and information. The gospel itself leads us into a relationship, a life-giving relationship with God himself through the person of Jesus Christ. And so to see him share these things, to hear him talk on these subjects was just so deeply, richly meaningful for me. And I'm so thankful for the opportunity to have been able to grow under that for so many years, really all of my Christian life to this point. And so I'm actually going to, one of the reasons I wanted to take a moment to do this was both to share, just throw my own voice among the sea of voices that are sharing their gratitude to Ravi's ministry, and also, by the way, to his wife Margie and their kids for sharing him with us so freely. Your rewards, no doubt, are going to be great in heaven as well. for your sacrifices. But I'm going to share a link to a video that was one of the earliest large conferences that Ravi spoke at in 1983 in Amsterdam. It was my first time I ever saw him, as it were. I wasn't there. This was 10 years before I came to know the Lord, which is in itself a great testimony to how a ministry committed to making known the God of truth can have a lasting impact. Here it was 10 years later, and this video had a tremendous impact on me. But I'm going to share a link to it because it's a young, early Ravi Zacharias sharing such passion with such passion and desire the gospel in a way that's meaningful not only for really for everybody, but especially even for the thinker. And that became a hallmark of his ministry, helping thinkers believe and believers to think. And so, as Ravi's now entered his glory, as he's enjoying the rewards, as he no doubt has heard, "Well done," the rest of us say adieu. We'll when we all get to heaven, we'll rejoice, we'll celebrate the things that God has done through all of God's servants, the way that God is glorified, and all that kind of a thing. But in the meantime, we say adieu to another great servant of God, and a hole is felt by many of us, but a great gratitude is expressed by many of us as well. And so, for that, I just want to say, Ravi, thank you. You wore his coat well.